tan. Where the frick am I?
Coming up, Peanut Hamper returns as she crash lands on a planet inhabited by bird people.
Please don't dismantle me. I'll tell you anything you want to know about Starfleet. I'll give you all their codes.
Will Peanut Hamper become a kinder, gentler version of her former self?
I just wish I could go back and do the right thing, but Starfleet would never forgive me.
Or will she continue to be as prissy and selfish as ever?
Keep it in your pants, sister. I'm not trying to steal your bird, man.
All this and more coming up on the Lower Decks edition of Energize.
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 We're satirically going into the uncharted regions of the Star Trek universe.
You're listening to Energize, a Star Trek Lower Decks edition podcast, your source for hilarious analysis, colorful debate, and fun discussions about adventures of Ensign Beckett Mariner and the USS Cerritos Lower Decks crew.
I'm your host, Anthony McLemore.
And I'm Steve Truitt.
This week, the derelict, now AWOL robot Starfleet officer Peanut Hamper reemerges on a planet full of seemingly primitive bird people.
Will Peanut Hamper finally learn the error of her ways and become a better exocamp? Or will she wreak havoc?
Here's a warp speed recap of Episode 7 of Star Trek Lower Decks, a mathematically perfect redemption.
Personal log. I'm stranded with a bunch of hillbilly birds on a planet that's never even been first contacted.
You are the first visitor in my lifetime.
Oh,
I beg of your pardon.
Yeah, it's just something we space folks say when we're stranded on a backwater planet with no culture.
That space box is what the ancient ones warned us about.
Peanut Hamper is a living being. She deserves our respect.
Yeah!
Sky snakes! That's no sky snake. That's...
Truck-body scavengers!
We don't have much time. They're tearing the very ground apart.
Someone has to get on that Truck-body ship and disable it.
But who could go undetected?
While avoiding alien warriors.
Look, guys, it's me! I'm the one who could do it!
No! Peanut, it's too dangerous!
The needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few, baby.
But you aren't even a few. You're just one.
No, I'm Starfleet.
All right, Steve, so this was a freaking hilarious episode of Star Trek Lower Decks. Peanut Hamper returns.
I know, and totally unexpected. I try not to look at what's happening next week. I don't look ahead. I really want to be surprised. This was such a surprise, this episode.
Yes, and so what they did to refresh everyone's memory, instead of doing a reality bit on the Cerritos, what they did was they actually did a previously on, like you would see in most TV shows. So they said, previously on Star Trek Lower Decks, we saw Peanut Hamper's betrayal during the battle with the Packlets at the end of season 1, where they asked her to go aboard the Packlet ship and plant a virus because she's a robot.
Right.
And she refused to do it and literally gave the crew of the Cerritos the middle finger and said, so long. And she said, sucks to be organic, and literally beamed out of the ship into space to watch the battle ensue.
Yeah, and I loved everything about this. I want to say one quick note. I know that I notice this a lot in television. Maybe you know this too. Whenever you have a 10-episode series of something, usually the 6th or 7th episode is always what I call a departure episode, where they just step away from the usual and they tell a different story in a different way. And this was exactly the same thing. To start with her, obviously an expanded version of her in space. They pick up the story a little bit more in that previously on, and then they just go right into the title sequence with her just floating around in space after being abandoned by the crew, or when the crew were rescued by the Titan. And I just found it awesome. I loved it.
I mean, it was great because I always wondered what was going to happen to Peanut Hamper.
Yeah.
I mean, I was just like, they've got to go back and revisit that story. Now, in the super tease for the season, we did catch a glimpse of Peanut Hamper. So we knew that we would see her at some point. But the big question was how?
Yeah.
And what was the story going to be?
Yeah.
So, so I just thought it was really great. So she's out there floating in space watching the battle.
Yeah.
And, she's being a selfish, bratty, for lack of a better word, bitch. And so it was a trip to see her watching the battle.
Yeah.
And she watches Lieutenant Shax die.
Yeah.
And she was like, oh, good choice. And then she's sitting there waiting for the Cerritos to be destroyed. And then is shocked when the Titan flies in. And she
she's
thinks
like,
that the Titan's going to pick her up.
Exactly. She's like, well, certainly you want to save me too, right? And then they leave, and she's like, that's okay. Someone will come get me. Not, exactly. And that's where they go into the title sequence, which is totally different, where they spend the credits and showing her floating in space waiting to be rescued. There was I
thought it was awesome.
Oh, my God. It just was so fantastic. I just love what they're doing. They're taking so many liberties. They're not sticking always to the script, so to speak. And I blew me away. I thought this is going to be a great episode. I could just tell.
Yeah, and this was an episode that threw curveballs, and I have to really give a salute to the writers at Star Trek Lower Decks because they are not playing into the same tropes that many shows do, where you can just absolutely predict what's going to happen. And they led us in directions and then completely threw us a curveball. But we'll get into that.
Yeah, absolutely.
What we need to focus on is getting this nacelle working so we can get the hell out of Junksville. I scraped up enough dilithium to juice it to warp factor 0.02, maybe 0.03 if we're lucky.
So we open Act 1, and Peanut Hamper's still out there floating around the wreckage from that battle, and she's putting together what looks like to be maybe her own ship to get herself out of there. But while she's doing it, she's just mocking the Cerritos crew and trashing them and just being the typical bitch that she is.
Be a hero, Peanut Hamper.
Yeah.
The needs of the many outweighs the needs of the few, Peanut Hamper.
Yeah.
What about the needs of me?
Right.
She's like, kill myself for a bunch of random people I just met 3 hours ago. It was my first day. I just thought that was nuts. I was just like, you self-absorbed brat.
Yeah.
It was just freaking hilarious.
And it's just adorable what she's doing. She's talking to this puppet of herself in a way called Sophia. And it's so much like, the first thing I'm thinking is like, oh, that's Wilson from, Castaway. She's even drawn a face on it and she's talking to it. She's like, what are you talking about, Sophia? Oh my God, you're so right. Like she's just talking like Sophia is talking to her.
Yeah, and it's very clear by all of her mocking that she just doesn't get what Starfleet's all about.
Yeah.
But she did say in that season finale episode 1 that she basically joined Starfleet to piss off her dad.
Yeah, that's hysterical.
We make a pretty good team, don't we, Soph? I hope you know that whatever happens out there, you've got a friend for life. Huh? Ah! Jerk body scavengers! Sorry, Soph. Only room for one. Okay.
Finally, one day, a ship shows up, and it looks like a freighter. It just looks like this random ship, and it bangs into the debris, and she's like, oh, I'm going to be saved. But actually, it's a scavenger ship. And it starts to pull up all of the debris, and she's part of that debris.
Yeah, and so she's being pulled up, and in true Peanut Hamper form, she sells out her friend, her Wilson of sorts, Sophia.
Yeah.
Sorry, Sophia, and she sticks Sophia and jams up the beam, and then gets on her warp nacelle that she built and gets the heck out of there.
And that was great too, because the ship, was like for one burst. It didn't go very well with the ship, and she gets out enough to get away from that scavenger ship, but it kind of poops out, and she winds up, barreling toward this planet.
What? Rattan? Where the frick am I? Ah! The space box has awoken!
Now, no need to pretend. I know you are awake. You've been rebuilding your power for days. Your metal body is fascinating.
Wow, stare much? I don't know you, sir. You're being very creepy.
And so then she wakes up on the planet Rattan, and a Birdman, tells her that she's in no danger. So she's all freaked out. And every time she speaks in this episode, she's lobbing an insult.
Yeah.
She's just a bag full of insults, one after the other.
She's so great.
Condescending.
Yeah, and this character is played by a young lady named Heather Donahue, who just plays it to the hilt. She owns the character so well. It's like she's part of the crew. She's so comfortable with what she's doing. I just believed every minute, and she was hysterical. Everything that came out of her, and it's curse words everywhere. It's just so great.
She sounds like an entitled, bratty teenager the entire time. I mean, she nails it. So this Birdman is fascinated with her metal body, and he witnessed her fall from the sky.
Right.
So he tells her, you've been regenerating your power, and that was the first not red flag, but just the first wait a minute, okay, you're primitive, but how do you know about regenerating power?
Right, and he doesn't really explain. He does tell her that they live very simply, but there's not a lot of clues yet until they get out into the town square and they're walking around.
Wait, you're not in the Federation?
The what now?
So no ships come here? Ever?
You are the first visitor in my lifetime.
Oh,
I beg of your pardon.
Yeah, it's just something we space folks say when we're stranded on a backwater planet with no culture.
So basically, he establishes the fact that his name is Kalturos, and he introduces her to his people. So he's taking her around, and he makes a point that they haven't seen any off-worlders, and he doesn't know anything about Starfleet. Right. So it takes you back to, okay, these people are really, really primitive. Yeah. But he knows about regenerating. So yeah.
Yeah, and so they're walking through the square, and she says the F word. I love how, and in this whole episode, it's just being thrown around, and I love that they bleep it. It's so fantastic. And she says, fuck, and he's like, what does that mean? And she goes, oh, it's just something we space folks say when we're stranded on a backwater planet with no escape. And just that awesome attitude was so great. Yeah.
But what was really another tip-off that they did right before the sun comes out is that there's this kid who gives her a rattle or something, and she's like, what is this? And then she gives the kid a piece of candy using her replicator. And so one person says, this is what the ancient ones warned us about. Right.
Right.
And so now you're starting to put together something that, who are the ancients and what ancient ones and what did they say? Right. So it's very interesting. But then all of a sudden the crowd parts and Kalturos' son comes through.
This is my son, Rauda. While you are here, he will show you our ways and be your guide.
Father, I am next to be the village leader. I can't be seen fraternizing with this mechanical creature.
Getting some major village bad boy vibes from Raw Dog, am I right?
And he's just a big dude, and his name is Rauda, and she just calls him Raw Dog.
I spit up my drink when she said, "Okay, Raw Dog."
That's so great.
Yeah,
so
and he's
awesome.
like totally, dismissing her.
Yeah.
The father is tasking him to show her the ways of their people,
right.
And then he's just really flip about it,
right.
And then she's just like, "Oh, I'm getting some real bad boy vibes here, Raw Dog."
Raw Dog. That's not my name. There's a bit of a set two there, and he turns around and leaves because there's a bit of a challenge. Rada wants to, act like he's the king, or at least, challenge his father, who's the leader. And the father's like, you're not ready for leadership because of your, attitude and all that. So Rada walks away.
Personal log. I'm stranded with a bunch of hillbilly birds on a planet that's never even been first contacted. I could still put out a distress call if I wanted Starfleet security to toss me in a penal colony, which isn't the worst option because there's nothing going on here.
And then we get to Peanut Hamper by herself, and she's doing her personal log. And the best line, she's just like, I'm stranded on this planet with a bunch of hillbilly birds.
That was funny. I mean, because she's just completely dismissive, and I'm wondering I'm like, is this girl, this robot, is she gonna learn anything?
Yeah.
And I'm just like, I guess not. But the deal is though, she's smart enough not to send a distress call. Because she basically would get court-martialed the moment anyone from Starfleet showed up.
Right.
So she's not going to send it.
Right.
So she spends the day with Rada. I just like saying that.
It's insulting him.
Raw Dog.
And she's insulting him all the way.
So does every animal on this planet have wings?
Of course they do.
Of course they do. That's not the use in this quadrant, FYI. Not that you'd know anything about anything.
And they're kind of walking around, and suddenly they look up and they're like, Sky Snake. And she's like, wait a second, you all literally fly in the sky. Why'd you had to add Sky Snake? Why couldn't you just call it a snake? Like
everything on
she
the
says-
planet flies.
I
Air
know.
has wings. Everything has wings.
I wonder if that was a line in the writer's room where they're like, oh, let's introduce a Sky Snake. And the guy's like, well, why would you call it a Sky Snake? I could see that coming out of the writer's room discussion.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. So that was really funny.
No one has ever survived a sky snake attack. Death will be swift. And when...
Anti-venom!
Father, how did you...
Yeah, calm down. It's called science.
And then all of a sudden there's an emergency, and we find that Radha's father has been he's been bitten by the sky snake and is on the verge of dying.
Yeah, the snake bit him. He stabbed the snake. They're both lying there. And, of course, Peanut Hamper's like, oh, no worries. I can take care of that. And they're like, oh, we have to say goodbye to him. He's going to die. And she's like, hang on. Psst. She gives him like a hypo spray or something. And he just snaps right back up. And suddenly she's this huge hero.
And so life at the village, you know, she's just walking around. Everybody knows who she is. She's improved their lives. She's healed various people, done various things.
Yep.
They go to the hatchery where, you know, just like in real life, there's a percentage of eggs that never hatch in real life. But she goes through and gets them all 30 of the hatchlings to come out, you know, they're alive. So
I thought that was I thought that was going to be something like that. I kept thinking, oh, that's going to be a problem later. Like, you know, half of them are supposed to die or something like that. You know?
Yeah, it did cross my mind. I was just like, okay, so this means she's going to upset some kind of balance that's going to come back to bite everyone later. Yeah. But it just shows that she is really breaking Prime Directive. She's still a Starfleet officer, technically. Of course. Yeah, you're not supposed to interfere.
Oh my God, she's
doing
like, who
that
cares?
at every turn. yeah.
It's peaceful up here.
It's my favorite place to hide.
Growing up, all my dad wanted me to do was stay with him and the other exocomps. But now I can imagine a life in one place. Here, with you.
So Radha is impressed by this, and he takes her flying. Dude, there's so many images in this episode. Taking her flying reminds me of Superman. Flying through the village reminds me of Avatar. There's flying turtles.
Exactly.
There's just so much. There's so much imagery that they borrow with pride, as a friend of mine used to say. And this really is an Avatar. It's shaping up to kind of be like an Avatar episode. She's the outcast with all the other people, and she's kind of starting to become one of them, because on this flight they start to, you know, like each other. They start to become close.
Yeah, he takes her to his beautiful overlook, and they bond over the fact that they're both people. they're both beings who are trying to live up to their parents' expectations.
Sure.
And this is when they have their moment, you know, and then you know, they end up making love. Oh my gosh.
Well, if you want to call it that, I mean, like, she remarks that the pieces are different, and they try to kiss, and he sticks out his bird tongue. It's disgusting.
I was cracking up because he goes,
great.
oh, how long for the touch of your nozzle?
Yeah, exactly. So great. So then
Our pieces are so different.
it's so different.
In the distant past, the Arior were a spacefaring species.
I'm sorry, what? Wait, like you guys have had technology this entire time?
No, but our ancestors did. It only brought them misery in the form of endless wars with alien species.
Cut to now, you know, post whatever they did, and he takes her to this secret place, which again reminds me of the Tim Burton version of Planet of the Apes, when Mark Wahlberg discovers the crashed ship, which is in the Forbidden Zone.
Right.
So they walk through this cave, and turns out they were a spacefaring species at one time.
Yeah, and that was a great surprise. Now, but that makes complete sense.
Yeah.
That the elders do know about technology.
Sure, right.
And the elders are always entrusted with the secrets that are passed down anyway. So,
Right.
You know, Radha knows about this.
Yes.
And it explains everything, and it comes back to bite us later on.
Right, exactly. I mean, you know they're not going to leave this one alone. It is interesting that he knew about it. He doesn't say anything. But in this moment, in this cave, he turns to her and he's like, you know what? You've changed our lives. You've changed my life.
Yeah, and then she turns around and she basically, he says, you're good. And she says, no, I'm not good. And she confesses all of her transgressions against the Cerritos crew.
Yep.
And all of her misdeeds. And he says, well, basically, you don't have to look to the past. You can look to me. And basically they make out again.
Yeah. And I buy it because, I think, she's seeing that she's valuable. She's seeing that she makes a difference. She knows that they have more in common than they realize, and I thought that was good. So, what happens next? They're getting married.
Sky snakes! That's no sky snake. That's
Chukmani scavengers! They were the ones who were trying to take me from that debris field. They must have tracked me here.
Just stay calm, my love.
This is all my fault! Don't let them take me!
I'm just like, she has a veil on.
Yeah,
I'm just
a
like,
veil.
oh my goodness, this is getting like super ridiculous. She's floating around and her dress is just the veil.
Yeah.
So, so they're about to get married when all of these ships, these scavenger ships, come flying in.
Right. And this was the ship that originally had showed up at the wreckage site and she was able to escape from. But it seems as though they've tracked her and followed her to the planet. And they jump down from their shuttle and they're like, you've got, used old wreckage and we want it. We're staking our claim on it. And they're like, well, you can't take it. You'll destroy our whole village. And he's like, it's worthless. What do you care? But he didn't even hear that it's going to ruin their whole village.
Captain, we're receiving a distress call from Peanut Hamper?
It looks like she's transmitting from a planet called Areolas. Areola, it's a pre-warp civilization.
So now she's in distress and breaking the Prime Directive. Mr. Boimler, set a course for Areolas, maximum warp.
And so Peanut Hamper decides to send a distress call out, and the Cerritos picks it up, and they're like, oh, we got to go to the planet Areolas.
Areolas? I don't know what to... Areola? Who cares? Let's
It's
just
a primitive planet.
Exactly.
It's a primitive planet.
Yeah.
Because he's aware of what he just said.
Oh,
it was hilarious.
God, that was so great. So, she's helping again because these scavengers are trashing the place, and she risks her own entrapment and court-martial by saving her friend.
Guys, it's me! I'm the one who could do it!
No! Peanut, it's too dangerous!
The needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few, baby.
But you aren't even a few! You're just one!
No, I'm Starfleet.
Yeah, and so there was a great build-up there. So they're talking about we need to send somebody on the ship to destroy it from the inside, to take it down. And then she's like, oh, that's me. So it's the same situation that happened in the season finale of season 1. But this time she steps in. So I'm like, okay, well, maybe this robot really is reformed. Maybe she's learned the lessons being with these people because she cares about them. Because she did say earlier, that organics, they're special. Because, they are fragile. Yeah. And so I think that she's completely bought it at this point.
I think so, too. And she gets in that shuttle, and I'm like, oh, my God, look at her go. And she flies the shuttle and smashes through the side of the ship, jumps out, starts knocking people down, and runs over to the computer to, I guess, implant some kind of code or virus that messes it up. And it begins to crash down toward the planet, and all the bird people and the Cerritos crew who are now witnessing this think that she's, given her life to sacrifice to make this ship crash.
But now I understand love and sacrifice. I feel a call to duty, and I need to rededicate my life to Starfleet.
So Captain Freeman and Lieutenant Shax and Tindy come, beam down just at the end of the ship crashing, and the bird people basically praise her for everything that she's done because she's not wanting to go to the brig,
right?
And they're like, well, we'd have to work out some things and everything, but no, we're here to celebrate the fact that we saw everything you sacrificed and that kind of thing. Oh, but there's another turn.
We received a subspace communication, an invitation that said these ships were scraps of junk for the taking, and we would be met with no resistance if we hauled them away.
He's lying.
It came from a prissy little robot. peanut butter.
That's crazy. This guy is so full of it.
Obviously, we recorded it.
So people survived the crash, the scavengers, and so they jump into one of the remaining bird ships that's down there, and it's working, and they steal it and shoot off into space and start trying to attack the Cerritos with this really intense weapon.
Yeah, they're very sophisticated. Actually, their weaponry is better than the Cerritos. So Cerritos is getting their ass kicked, and they're like, well, why are you attacking us? Why are you attacking this peaceful species? And they're like, we were invited.
Well, that's the thing. Like, so Ransom is like, he doesn't necessarily order to fire back or evasive maneuvers. He's like, open a channel, which I think it was kind of strange, but it was to set this up and to say, hey guys, why are you attacking me? And they're like, we were invited here. And
yeah, like by who?
Yeah, well, that's what PH says. Gee, who could have done that? And he goes, it was you, because they're all now connected via comms, and they're like, it was you. You sent us a signal, and she's like, no, I didn't. And so great. She goes, no, I didn't. And he goes, well, obviously we recorded it.
And there she is being dismissive. Oh, you can come here, get the ships. They don't need them. They're primitive.
Totally.
You'll get them without resistance. I was just like, oh my gosh.
It was
She's
so great.
Back.
She's
back to her old self.
And at some point during the attack, I think, I don't know, maybe this isn't the right time, but even the scavenger guy, the leader of the scavenger ship, when his engines are overloading, he's like, what the fuck is going on? Like, everyone's just swearing. It's just so great.
But Peanut...
Oh my god, just shut the up, Rowda. Grow a beak. I wasn't going to spend the rest of my very long robotic life on a freaking bird planet.
How could you?
Oh boy, here comes the waterworks. This guy cries at everything. He even cries after we do it.
And so the thing is, Rada is completely shocked and saddened, and she disses him in the middle of his despair. She's like,
Totally.
shut the fuck up.
Grow a beak.
Rada, hey, grow a beak.
Grow a beak. Stop crying. My God, he cries at everything.
Oh, man. Oh, my God. She basically took his manhood right then. He was done.
Totally. And it turns out, she staged the whole thing, the calling Starfleet. She just didn't want to be stuck on that bird planet anymore.
For the flock!
So basically, Rada jumps in one of the bigger bird ships and goes up there and attacks the other bird ship that had been taken by the scavengers and disables it. Yeah. So he literally is the one that saves the day.
Yeah.
So Crybaby saves the day. And so after all this, she's like, trying to appear and just like, hey, what's up, y'all? She had walked off a second ago and gotten hit by a falling burning tree.
Yep.
And then now she's like, okay, all's well that ends well. And she's like, hey, I want to come back to the ship. And Captain Freeman was like, hell no.
Yeah. And then she's like, I don't care. Like, she goes right back to just being awful.
We did it! Organics and technology working together.
Get out of here!
Oh, whatever. I didn't want to stay here anyway. You're like the poor man's Aurelians. Come on, Captain. Let's beam out of this hole.
And then she's like, you know what? I'm gonna call the Borg. And she tries to raise her antenna and they keep just shutting it down.
Yeah.
Pushing it back in. Stop.
Yep. Stopping her. And you realize that we have all been duped. We've been taken down this huge rabbit hole that fooled the Birdmen, it fooled the scavengers, it fooled Cerritos, and it fooled us. She was a complete character, incredibly well written and really well voiced. I love departure episodes in all series, and this was one of my favorites. It was so great. And of course the ending was great too.
Who the hell are you?
I am Agamus, and I think you and I could do awful things together.
No! Stop it! You stop laughing with us! Nobody invited you guys! Stop!
Yeah, so she's basically put into custody with a bunch of, I guess, errant robots, sentient robots. And then there's one that's annoying and she doesn't want to talk to that one. And then she's talking to this other one. And basically it looks like these two are going to conspire. So we may see Peanut Hamper again.
Yeah, so she was put in some kind of prison In Starfleet? Were they in Starfleet headquarters? It looked like they were in San Francisco. I couldn't tell. But yeah, and it was just this huge, vast, as they zoom out, there's these little tiny cells for all these little computers. My question, of course, is why don't they just turn them off? But the answer is because there wouldn't be another fun episode coming up someday. So yes, she may play a huge part down the road. And she's such a great character that I want more. I want so much more of her.
Oh, I love it. I just like hearing what comes out of her mouth because she's so dismissive and rude and ugly and bratty. I love it. I love it. I love it. So I was so happy that they brought Peanut Hamper back for this episode. It really made the whole episode. Plus dealing with bird people, and it was really, really great. It was just awesome. So that leads us to what were our top 2 moments in this episode.
Okay. Do you want me to start, or do you want to do it this time?
No, go ahead. Tee it off.
Okay, I would say my number 2 is just the amount of swearing and just the overall attitude of this episode. It was just a don't give a damn, throw in a bunch of curse words, bleep them out. Everyone's swearing. It just that naughtiness of it. I loved it. I really loved the attitude of this show.
Yeah, and you know what? I have to go with you on that one because that's what made the episode, was just her being dismissive and all the things that she was saying. Be a hero, Peanut Hamper.
Yeah.
Kill myself for a bunch of randoms.
Yeah.
I just met 3 hours ago. It's my first day. I just love every comment she said was
every
funny.
comment she said and every curse word and everything. It was so irreverent. But my favorite was actually just one moment. And it was in the middle of this fight when it turns out that Peanut Hamper had invited or requested or signaled to the scavengers to come. And she's denying it. And he's like, you asked us to come. And she's like, what? That's crazy. And he goes, obviously we recorded it, which I was drinking coffee at the moment and I just spit out just the way he delivered the line. I don't know. I just loved it. It was such a great moment.
Oh, it was fantastic. It was a wonderful reveal. Bravo to the writers because, they led us in so many directions. You didn't know how it was going to end.
Yeah.
And if this were a cheesy 80s show, she would have made a full 180 turnaround.
She would have learned. Exactly. It's like the Seinfeld edict. You know what the Seinfeld edict is for every episode they wrote? No hugging, no learning.
No, the more you knows.
Yeah,
and that was an NBC show. So.
All right, so what's your number 1?
Yep. My number 1 was the the awkward bird to robot sex. Yeah, that was freaking hilarious. I was just like, no freaking way.
You're right. That was terrific. It was a little bit like Team America World Police when they had that sex scene. Did you ever see?
Oh yes. I remember that. But the line will stick with me. Oh, how long for the touch of your nozzle?
Yeah, exactly.
Oh my gosh. So yeah, that was my number 1, man. This was a wonderful episode. We have 3 more to go. So I think we're now at a pace. So something's going to happen. Something big is going to happen. They're going to do it.
Yeah, and they've set up a lot. I think they've set up a lot of stories individually throughout this season. And there may be a Peanut Hamper. There may be, who knows, maybe Rutherford goes nuts again. Or I don't think they're going to let it go lightly to the end of the season because last season's ender was so big and intense. I think they're headed right for that again.
Well, that does it for this edition of Energize, a Star Trek Lower Decks edition podcast. If you want to hear more episodes of Energize, go to www.energizepodcast.com. There you'll have a Strange New Worlds edition of Energize and the Lower Decks edition of Energize. Thanks for listening. I'm Anthony McLemore.
I'm Steve Truitt. Live long and prosper, bitches.
Smell you later. Oh yeah, and I mean that literally, because y'all